Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. It is Thursday, August the 14th. Zach Ewing, along with Wilson Alexander, our LSU football beat writer, and Scott Rabalais, the Advocate's, of course, premier Baton Rouge sports columnist.
I'm the only one.
The only one. You are the best and the worst and everything in between.
I'm one of one.
Yes,
That's good.
That is true.
You're first and last, actually.
That's right.
As promised on Monday, we're going to kind of take like a midway point look at camp. What are we like? It's 12 out of 21 practices done now. It's slightly over halfway.
Yes. I guess today LSU is practicing. It's close to the media, but I think this is practice 13.
Okay. So we're slightly more than halfway, but you also still have the game week in there, the Clemson week, which we're not counting in those 21. So we're effectively halfway between the start of camp and the Clemson game. So this is sort of an opportunity for us to take a step back and talk about things that we have liked so far that these gentlemen have seen out on campus, and then things that are still concerns or maybe have concerns that have popped up. First, want to let you all know that we are brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. You can command the road in a Cadillac, where luxury, power, and presence come together. Experience it today at Jerry Lane Cadillac. So, I don't know, big picture, like, it's hard not to be optimistic in preseason camp. That's just like a football thing. We say that all the time. Is this generally the same, or do you feel like it feels like the vibes are good out there?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that there's more optimism around this team compared to maybe last season, in particular around the same time. I probably need to go back and look at what my preseason prediction was for LSU last year, but I think I said 9-3, and I really felt like it could have been like 8-4. And this year, I feel like everything, because of the number one transfer portal class coming in, the return of Garrett Nussmeier, some of the things we've seen out there in camp, this feels like a team that, should be in contention for a playoff spot. And I don't know, Rab, do you agree with that? I don't think that was the case at this time last year. I'm sure the optimistic person thought maybe so, but it felt like there was a lot of flaws with that team that I don't think we see quite as much this fall.
Yeah, you're worried about the running game. You're worried about Garrett Nussmeier taking over as a starter. You're certainly worried about the defense, had concerns about the defense as you went on. It clearly looks like a talented team, a talented group of guys. They've got depth. Like, you think of the defensive line, who's going to start, who's not, and there's 8 guys who can play in a rotation, and there's 6 wide receivers who they can at least count on, maybe more. Obviously, it all hinges on Garrett Nussmeier, and a lot hinges on the offensive line. But there are some points where things could break down if they go awry. But going into it, yeah, they've got a talented group. They've just got to show that they can be a team, and then show that they can weather what's going to be some adversities that come during the season. But yeah, to start with, they're starting from a good point, which is they have talent.
It is though. Just to preface before we get into the rest of the conversation, there's so much variance within how this season could go. Like, yeah, I think that they could be a playoff team. They could also, like, I don't know, the wheels could fall off. I mean, I guess any team is subject to that happening, but they have a pretty tough schedule to play. 7 of the top 25 teams in the preseason AP poll. Like, this could go a number of different ways, depending on, like you said, kind of how certain areas respond to, like, how certain pressure points, what happens to them if things crack that we think are a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the transfer portal era, that variance increases for almost every team, but especially if you're the teams that do rely on the transfer portal talent. The Ole Miss of last year, like, you could see how that was starting to turn into a pumpkin late in the year, because you just don't have that continuity and your traditional team values when you've got a bunch of new guys in that locker room. So, but I think one thing about this team is that Brian Kelly has been very optimistic and outspoken about his optimism. I mean, really ever since the end of last season, pretty much.
We should have tracked throughout the offseason, like, how many times he said this is the best roster that he's had at LSU, and just basically how many times he expressed confidence, because I would be losing track at this point. And it's something that I asked him about it recently, like, why do you feel this way? When did you feel this way? Because he told me that they had a team that could win the SEC before spring practice. He'd never even seen them on the field together. And I said, how did you feel that way then? And with that, before I were watching them, on the field. And he said he was really confident in what he had seen on tape, in the character of the guys that he had brought in. And Brian Kelly has talked a lot this offseason about how he feels like going into year 4 now. They've got the foundation set. They have some returning players that are going to be really key to this team, like Garrett Nussmeier and Whit Weeks, and how they're sort of able to then bring in transfers to go into that, who can fit seamlessly into that culture. And it's a lot of, coach speak kind of stuff, but that's how he says he feels about it, that feeling has only continued and increased since he actually saw them practice.
Brian Kelly is either he knows he's got a good hand, he's looking at his hand, or he's like, I got nothing, but I'm going to bluff these guys.
But given his situation, why would you bluff? He's already under, quite a bit of pressure for a guy who's won 29 games in 3 years. Like, I don't think that the right move for that guy in that situation is to say, we're going to be good this year, when you're not sure that you are. Like, to me, that makes me more optimistic for LSU.
Well, this is the counterpoint about Brian Kelly that I think 4 years in, everyone's still trying to figure out is, how motivated. He said, he basically, he came here to try to win a national championship. It was one thing he hasn't done is win a national championship at the highest level. Now, he's had a career that is Hall of Fame, college football Hall of Fame caliber. I've said that before. If he retired right now, he'd be in the Hall of Fame in 5 years. But he has that hole on his resume. But they're paying him the $100 million over 10 years, no matter what. LSU's on the hook for that. Right. He's getting the money, and it's like, if you could argue he's like, yeah, I could say all these things. If it works out, fine. If it doesn't, fine. Because obviously, if they lose to Clemson and they come back and beat La Tech and they lose to Florida, they start 1-2. Everybody's gonna be like, "You said this is going to be a really good team, and you said this and that." People in the media, certainly the fans, and it's like, huh? Yeah, I've still got the job, and I don't think he's getting fired.
Yeah, but I mean,
so I have an answer for you as to why. If you say, is he bluffing, or is not? Like, why is he bringing this up now? Why is he doing this? Well, I asked him recently. If you want to know,
yeah, let's do it.
We were at the Baton Rouge Food Bank for LSU's service day there, and I said, "Why are you doing this? Why aren't you? You could just sort of tamp it down and not really say anything one way or another." And he said, he kind of looked out at the players and he said, I think it's time, when you know that you've done the things necessary to prepare your team for a championship run, to let them know about it. They listen to it more than anybody else, and sometimes you don't get a chance to articulate those things enough so your kids can hear what you think about them. I want them to hear what I thought.
It's interesting. I mean, I think there are coaches who, when things aren't going well, they try to pump everybody up, and when things are going well, they try to tamp it down and say, we can't get too high. We have to stay even keel. And that's a typical coaching thing. But it's interesting in the preseason how that could change and how he's trying to increase confidence within his roster.
And that's great. Again, there's a counterpoint to everything. And the counterpoint to that is you can say, I thought they were overconfident going into the USC game last year. I thought they were just gonna beat USC, and then USC proved to be a stuffer test and nipped them at the end. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, you should be confident. I mean, you should be. You should be confident. It's just in this day and age, it's unusual to hear a coach say as often what he's been saying. I think I will say this to Wilson's point. I think it has permeated to the team. I think they, talking to the players, they do feel confident. They have a little chip on their shoulder, like, we're going to run the ball better this year, or we're going to be better on defense this year, or something like that. And whether that comes to pass in the results, I don't know. But
you say that, and I'm reminded of Will Campbell last year saying how they're going to run the ball, and
that's more typical of every preseason camp. That's like, we'll be better at this specific thing that we were bad at because it's a new year and we just feel fresh and we haven't been proven wrong yet. So that's more of a typical. So speaking of that, let's drill down onto some specific things that do have you guys optimistic thus far. And the first one is, and this is really where there's probably the most room for improvement, just sort of defense generally. I mean, you wrote about it in your practice observations, was that Tuesday? Just the defense in 11-on-11 sessions in pads has really been controlling things, especially up front.
Yeah, and we'll get into why that gives you concern about the offense. But defensively, it looks good. I mean, Bernard Gooden, a transfer from South Florida, it seems like he has a tackle for loss every day, at least one. He's very active in getting into the backfield. You begin to think that he's a guy who can make plays. You see it from, Harold Perkins has been disruptive. And that's an encouraging sign for maybe what he can do now as a senior. And there's just in general, like LSU's offense will like pop some explosive plays, and even on the ground, like here and there, break a long run. But inconsistent. It's inefficient because the defense is, maybe it's a gain of 3 yards or a tackle for loss or stuffing a run at the line of scrimmage or something, and then getting pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. So it's kind of made it hard. It feels like for LSU's offense, at least when we've been out there, to sort of consistently click in the passing game as well. So it feels like the defense has mostly been the winner of camp. We talked to Brian Kelly on Friday, and gosh, I might just ask him if that's what he has seen as well, because that's certainly what we've noticed.
Definitely been explosive on offense. We've seen some great passes from Nussmeier, so that's encouraging. But the defense does look better overall, depth-wise, players making plays, the secondary coming together. There's there are a lot of good areas on this team that are we make you say, well, they're going to be good because of what they're doing. And of course, it starts with Nussmeier, but it's, for everything in practice though is like it's got. Well, this was done well with on the offense. Well, then the defense didn't look good, or vice versa. So you can always weight it one way or the other depending on kind of what you want to see. But I think in general, consistently the defense has looked more consistently good. Although the offense is making this play, and sometimes they're just going to make plays, right? I mean, I've always thought Wilson, you can have the best coverage, and sometimes the quarterback is just going to make the throw, and the guy's going to make the catch, and there's going to be a 40-yard gain, and that's what happens in football. But consistently, the defense has been the one kind of, as Zach said, controlling things.
I feel like this has a chance to be LSU's best defense since 2019. Do you think? I mean, the bar is like on the floor. There's
just
two of those defenses.
laying on the floor.
Two of those defenses were two of the worst in school history. But what do you think? I feel like, again, it's not a high bar to clear. Really, you just have to be better than 2022.
2022. Okay.
I think that defense wasn't bad necessarily. Matt House's first year, when everybody thought like, oh wow, he should be a head coaching candidate someday, and then
take a little crow hop over that bar.
Yeah.
But
anyhow, so yeah, the bar's low, but I mean we're also talking about half a decade here, and I think that could be the best one they've had since then. I like what I've seen out of the secondary, especially compared to the past 2 years. I feel like they've gotten better talent there. I mean, there's still some. I'm still not really sure who's going to start opposite Mansour Delane going to the first game, because they've been rotating a lot of guys, and it's a pretty fierce competition. P.J. Woodland has really come on this camp.
Yeah, really come on lately, yeah.
Ashton Stamps continues to battle for time. DJ Pickett is in there, but is he going to be ready as a true freshman to start against Clemson? Kind of unclear yet. We haven't seen him get a lot of work with the first team. So, and then Jakeem Jackson, Florida transfer, who got hurt earlier this week, but he's also in the mix. So I feel like their safety play, I think, is probably going to be better with Tamarcus Cooley and A.J. Halsey most likely starting back there. And so that gives me some confidence, too. I feel like everything I've heard and everything I've seen is LSU's secondary is going to be improved over the past 2 years. Is it going to be the DBU of old? Probably not. But I think it should be much better than it has been.
I think to your point, Rab, we have a baseline expectation for this offense. It's not going to be bad. Now, we O-line concerns like, is it going to be great? We don't know that yet. But the fact that this defense is competing this well and even winning most of the battles against an offense that we know is at least going to be decent, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, but like, to me, that's a good sign for LSU. Like, if the defense was just getting annihilated throughout camp, then you'd be like, okay, well, this D may not be very good, and we just don't know. But the fact that they are competing with an offense that we know at worst is going to be like an average SEC offense, I don't think they're going to be worse than that. With
I'd be surprised if they were worse than that.
With Garrett Nussmeier and the receivers they have and some of the skill position players, like you'd think that we know more about this offense, and so the fact that the defense, which was the unknown, is winning the battles, I think is a good sign. And it's depth, guys. It's like every day I read the practice observations, and it's Bernard Gooden, and then it's Jacobian Guillory, and then it's Ahmad Bro. Somebody else is having a big day on the D-line. Same thing with the defensive backs. You mentioned some of those names. I mean, like, I think they can come at you in waves a little bit.
Yeah, it's and that's important. Look, the other team has a drive. You can't just keep the same 4 defensive linemen in there. You're going to have to rotate guys in there that you can count on, and same might be true in the secondary. It should be better. Last year they were an average defense. Yeah, they were literally pretty average.
Slightly
in the
below
country.
average. Yeah.
Yeah, 60 ranked in the 60s in the country
Yeah.
in total offense and points allowed. They don't have to be 2003 or 2011's defenses, but they do need to be. You know, the 2019 defense wasn't great historically by those standards, but the offense was so great. You think, okay, the offense is not going to be quite 2019 or 2023, but it's going to be really potent. So the defense just has to be, if they can give them something in the range of what they did in 2019, I think that would be a great combination for LSU, and that should be a playoff team. If they falter in one of those areas, well, then it's probably not going to be.
Okay, our other reasons for optimism here are probably a little more obvious. We'll go from least obvious to most obvious. So next one will be wide receivers. Again, the depth astounds me. Like, who was it who made the great catch Tuesday? Was that
Xavier Thomas.
Xavier Thomas made the great, and like,
Good throw from Nussmeier there too.
Is Xavier Thomas even a starter on this team? I don't like. They have so much talent at wide receiver, and they're all popping.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Anderson looks good now that he's healthy, and he's somebody who I know the coaching staff is high on. You know, Barry Brown is just so fast, and if LSU can get him going, that's a weapon. Aaron Anderson, we haven't seen a lot of in the spring. Here in the preseason because of the inflammation in his knee, but now he's this week is kind of getting fully back into the mix, and you're seeing him make plays. Xavier Thomas has that great catch, and he had a good week of camp this week. Who am I not mentioning? Chris Hilton. Yeah. And then we haven't even gotten to the guy who might be their number one. Chris Hilton hasn't been like a super loud camp from him, but I'm not too worried about what that can mean for the season because of what we saw in the bowl game last year. Although there is still that question is, can he stay fully healthy and then produce at that same level over the course of a full season? We'll see. But I know him and Garrett Nussmeier have a strong connection, so I'm not too worried about that. Yeah. How many guys did I just rattle off? 6, 5?
At least 5.
At least 5. Nick Anderson.
Aaron
Kyle
Anderson.
Parker.
Didn't mention Kyle Parker. That would be the other one. Who
Brian
could be
Kelly's mentioned him more than once this year. Destin Hill.
I don't think Destin Hill's going to be a huge piece of this passing game yet. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I just feel like there's all those other guys seem to be in front of him.
I don't think. I think a lot of times we in the media and certainly fans do get hung up on, well, who's starting. I don't think it's that important with this receiving core. Okay, the very first offensive snap at Clemson. Let's say the first 3 receiver, they're in the 3 wideouts, and it's Aaron Anderson and Chris Hilton and Barry and Brown. That doesn't mean Nick Anderson's not going to contribute a lot. That doesn't mean that Kyle Parker might not contribute a lot, or Xavier Thomas. They have a great rotation, and they're going to be able, very importantly too, I think they're going to be able to weather an injury to one of these guys, which somebody's going to get hurt and miss some time at some point, and still be able to go on and be an effective offense. Obviously, everybody's important. We saw how much better they were at the very end of the last year when Chris Hilton finally got healthy and was able to make some plays. But it's a great group, and it's a deep group, and Garrett Nussmeier has done a great job getting the ball to them and having chemistry.
Yeah, that's you don't want to have too many injuries here because to that point we saw what happened last year when like Chris Hilton got hurt and they didn't have another bona fide vertical threat in that receiving core. So like they need most of these guys to stay healthy. The other thing, though, is that we see that there's a good bit of talent out here, and it probably doesn't matter who starts, but we don't yet know, like, do they have a first-round talent at receiver? I think if they might. I think the coaches think Nick Anderson maybe could be. And Brian Kelly, I think, has sort of said that Nick Anderson maybe could be that kind of guy. Maybe Chris Hilton could be that kind of guy. He's been clocked on his GPS at 23.7 miles per hour. It's the fastest on the team. And like they've got some guys who can maybe be first round pick types, but they really probably need at least one of them to emerge as a first round type of talent, because that's the best offenses in school history in 2019 and 2023 had 2 first rounders at wide receiver. You got to help Garrett Nussmeier out by having somebody like that on the outside. So we'll see who emerges as that, because it's not very obvious yet. That 2023 preseason, it was obvious. It was like, oh man, Malik Neighbors is going to be incredible this year.
Yeah.
And then Brian Thomas came on kind of after having a really quiet preseason as well.
I think the injury note is important because that's probably the one downside is like 3 of these guys have already been banged up in some form or fashion. Chris Hilton obviously has a long injury history.
So does Nick Anderson.
Yeah. And so But we mentioned 6 guys who could be legitimate starters or starter level contributors on this team. So I don't think that an injury would affect you as much as maybe it did last year. That's just the impression I get from seeing the highlights and watching these guys. Now, again, you don't want to have 3 of them, but it does feel like it's a deeper group.
Well, it just reminds me of a moment from LSU's coaches clinic in the spring. Joe Sloan's giving a presentation on play action passes, and he sort of makes the comment, I can't remember exactly how we got to this, but that he said how like LSU lost Chris Hilton and it didn't necessarily have that vertical speed downfield, and so he said, I did what any good coach would do. I went and I got another one, and that's Barry and Brown. And so they have a couple of options there if there is an injury, but you just can't afford like both of them to go down. Then I don't really know who is that guy burning everybody down the field, who's ready to play. Like Lonnie Watkins has a ton of speed, but is he ready to contribute this year? That's not as clear. So that's the injury point. Yeah, they need those guys to stay on the field and stay healthy.
Okay, related point for optimism, the most obvious point for optimism, but I think it needs to be said, and that is that Garrett Nussmeier looks good. I mean, he had the one-day sort of injury scare that set the internet ablaze and turned out to be fine. It's he's a little knee tendonitis, which I don't want to minimize. It's not nothing, but he's also going to be out there. This is not going to keep him from playing, and Wilson looks like he is the top 10 quarterback in the nation, Heisman candidate that we expected him to be.
The best thing to see out of Garrett Nussmeier this preseason is that he has not been turnover prone. Have not seen him make a lot of mistakes. Harold Perkins baited him into an interception in 7-on-7 one day. Other than that, I don't really recall him throwing a lot of making a lot of bad decisions and throwing balls into traffic. He's also run a couple of times when things have broken down. And yeah, you have to be a little bit skeptical of the knee. Is that going to be something that flares up during the season? But what we saw when it did happen that Wednesday was that he was a full participant in practice a few days later on a Saturday. And so, you got to kind of keep an eye on that, be skeptical of it, aware of it, I should say. But we haven't seen anything yet since it happened to make you think that it's something that will affect him during the season. And he looks decisive. As long as he has time to throw, as we'll get to, I feel like he can have a really good year.
He's still throwing some balls in some very tight windows.
He's an anticipatory passer. It's going to happen.
He's very good at that. It's a compliment. But also, and it's hard to tell if it's the design of the play or him reading the defense. But it seems like, instead of forcing the ball, as he may have done in the past, he looks like he's checking down to the running back dragging out of the backfield or to just someone shorter passing around that you make positive yardage and then you go try to make another big play. So but he's made plenty of great throws and has looked and before the tendonitis I saw him run the ball kind of impressively a couple of times. I do wonder if that's going to make him less eager to do that, but he does have that mobility. I think he's going to have to be mobile. We move the pocket behind this offensive line, but he's looked great, and obviously it's a huge talk about a bar to climb. That is a bar to climb because it's like without saying it or saying it, the expectation is Joe Burrow won the Heisman in his second year as a starter. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman in his second year as a starter. Is it his turn? And that's too much to ask for anybody.
It's not fair to put that.
It's not fair. It's not as unfair probably as Arch Manning being the Heisman favorite. But Garrett Nussmeier is one of the 2 or 3 players who people saying can win the Heisman this year, and we'll see how that turns out. But he's looked great in camp. Other than the knee issue, he's looked great.
The things I need to see from Nuss are not something that he can prove in camp. I want to see how he reacts to his first bad turnover. Things snowballed a little bit on him in the Texas A&M game, in the Alabama game. I want to see him get past that where, okay, crap, I threw a bad interception or missed a throw I should have made or something. Come back out, wipe the slate, and be who you are. And that's something that I think in a couple games he failed to do last year, and that's what I want to see. So he can't prove that in camp. He looks great right now.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back to last year's camp. He was throwing more interceptions. And I remember one time asking him, I was like, "Are you doing that thing that sometimes NFL quarterbacks talk about, where you're just trying something out to see if it works?" And he didn't really say yes to that. And this year we just haven't seen as much of it, which is again sort of everything in camp when it's good, I like to say it's just encouraging. It's encouraging, but let's see what happens against Clemson.
It's important to have a quarterback that people have confidence in. I think Jaden Daniels evolved in that guy. Joe Burrow just exuded that. It's just like, come on, you SOBs, we're going to win some football games.
Right.
And they said, okay, we're going to follow this guy. And Garrett, I remember that time we talked to him in Tampa before the ReliaQuest, was it the ReliaQuest? Well, the Bowls have changed. The bowl in Tampa when they beat Wisconsin.
His first start, yeah.
And he was like, Jaden wasn't going to play the bowl game, and he was like, this is basically said, this is my team now. And he's, even when it's like there wasn't a lot to go on, he's got that quality. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And if results breed even more confidence in him, that's great. It goes a long way. And I think he's got that quality if it can be borne out in the results of the games.
Well, you can be confident that the LSU Sports Insider podcast will be here twice a week throughout the season. You like that?
That blew me away. That was the best part of the show.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com is the name of the channel. It's kind of a mouthful, but if you search LSU Sports Insider on YouTube, you'll find it. Subscribe, sign up for notifications. We got all sorts of videos coming up, and hit the like button and leave a comment while you are there. With that said, we're going to take a break. We'll be back and talk about some of the things we are not so optimistic about on this LSU football team.
I think the biggest thing that separates us is our people. We have a really amazing staff that really care about their customers, really care about our product. At Jerry Lane Cadillac, we value trust and transparency above all else. We have a little bit of something for everyone. So whether it be the 2025 Escalade, any of the smaller crossover vehicles, the XT4, 5, and 6, we've also got a wide variety of new EVs, including the 2025 electric Escalade IQ. I think the product lineup right now is the best that it's ever been in Cadillac.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You gave me love, gave me love.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna tell them how Caesar's Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favourite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like, we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider podcast, going through some kind of midway point of preseason camp, reasons for optimism. Now we're going to do some reasons that still maybe have us concerned. And it, like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's still going to be the O-line. Like, the D lines looked so good. Is that because the D line is going to be a lot better than we thought? Is that because this O-line is still a huge question mark?
Yeah, we've pumped a lot of sunshine. Now it's time to bring everybody down.
That's right. We'll bring the clouds in. Yeah.
The offensive line it's kind of like most of the things we've talked about are sort of what we figured we would be optimistic about and concerned about coming into preseason camp, and what we've seen so far has only sort of reinforced those things. Although I think maybe the defense being as good as we've seen so far is the exception to that. The offensive line is what we said all offseason. LSU has to replace 4 starters. With DJ Chester moving to guard, nobody is playing at the same position that they had last year. You basically have an entirely new starting offensive line. LSU has, at the very least, been able to set the starters, at least at 4 of the spots. It seems very clear that Tyree Adams is going to be the left tackle, Braylon Moore will be the center, Josh Thompson will be the right guard, and Weston Davis will be the right tackle. That left guard spot still seems to be DJ Chester, but we've seen other guys get reps. Paul Mabenga, Cohen Eccles as well have been in there. And we'll see if anybody like a Carius Kern as a freshman is ready at some point during the season, if LSU needs him to be, if that left guard spot is a concern moving forward or not. We'll just kind of have to get into games to find out. But it's just one of those things where it's like LSU still isn't getting quite as much push on short yardage plays as you would like them to see up front. The whole emphasis has been more physical. It's hard to really know whether or not they have been here in camp, just because the defensive line is often winning things. There's moments, like I said, when LSU opens up a big run, but it's not consistent. It's kind of an inefficient from what we've been able to see so far. Garrett Nussmeier's been under pressure at times, had to roll out, throw things away, and that's not what you love to see when you know, again, that week one, LSU is going to be dealing with a pretty nasty defensive front there at Clemson. And so it is very easily the number one concern on this team. And Rab, I don't know about you, but I just haven't seen anything this camp to make me feel great about it going into the season. At this point, I'm just hoping that it's good enough.
Yeah, dovetailing what we said earlier about breaking big plays, occasionally you see a running back pop for a long play, or certainly Garrett has time to make the long pass. But it's what we saw. I've been looking to see if there's any improvement for what they didn't show last season, which is they make these big plays and it's first and goal at the 5, and then they're struggling to make those last few yards to push into the end zone, and it still seems like a struggle. They were in short yards at practice earlier this week, and nothing happened, and it's just it's not consistently good. Again, they can break a big play once in a while, but it's not consistently good. And it's not just talent on the offensive line; it's experience, it's chemistry, it's all these things. Maybe if they're looking for a silver lining, are the guards are they better at pulling, a little faster at pulling this year?
I can't quite tell yet.
That's something that wasn't good also last year. So it doesn't look a whole lot different from last year. And in fact, obviously last year's line was good at pass blocking, but it's just a bad matchup the first week, and that's something they could improve by week 8. Like when they go to Alabama, they could be a much better offensive line than they might be at Clemson. It doesn't bode well for the Clemson game, but there's room for improvement, and there's a chance for improvement, but it doesn't look like it's there just yet.
When teams are better than you think they should be on paper, it's because of line play. And when teams are worse than you think they should be on paper, it's because of line play. And that's what has me a little concerned is you look on paper and you go, man, look at the things we talked about, the receivers and Garrett Nussmeier, and the defense should be better, and it's so deep. And what is going to stop?
Some people say Caden Durham might be the best running back in the conference.
What is going to stop this LSU team, right? I mean, this is your answer. If something stops it, and I'm concerned too a little bit, like you mentioned that 4 guys are kind of entrenched in their spots. Maybe that's a good thing, but it also, I think there's kind of a lack of depth here. Like if you got an injury or 2 here, that could really be a problem.
I feel like you've got some playable depth at guard. I don't know if you have playable depth at tackle. That's what would concern me if Tyree Adams, or in particular, or if Weston Davis got hurt and had to miss time. Josh Thompson could kick out to tackle. He has some experience doing so. But the other guys who have been repping at tackle on the second team have been a true freshman in Carius Kern at left tackle, and then a redshirt freshman in Ori Williams at right tackle, guys who have not played. And so, I mean, gosh, Ori Williams is 6'8", but you don't know yet if he's ready to get out there in a hostile environment. What LSU was able to do with true freshmen at tackle a couple of years ago with Will Campbell and Emory Jones was an anomaly for a reason. Yeah. And so that's where I would be concerned, is if LSU suffered an injury at tackle. Guard, I think they could withstand it. We saw Paul Mabinga. I already mentioned that name. Like, he went in, played some games last year. He would have to get a lot better from what he showed last year, but he at least has some experience. Yeah. Or maybe there's a freshman who at some point in the year could be ready. Like Solomon Thomas was a really highly rated recruit. He's been out all preseason with a broken bone in his foot, and so maybe later in the year he could contribute, but I don't think he's there yet. And so that's the reason I'm glad that they've sort of set most of this offensive line is because one of the things Brian Kelly said back in the spring about the O-line was that they were going to take that competition halfway into preseason camp and then set it and kind of then be able to get ready for Clemson the final 2 weeks of the preseason, and they haven't had to do that. That's why I'm glad to have seen that they pretty much have it set, is that they have not had to have an ongoing offensive line competition for most of preseason practice. That's where
the chemistry, the playing together, knowing you can count on this guy next to you to do that, or this is important. Bordelon's name hasn't come up much. Is there any? We spoke to him one time in player interviews.
Yeah, because he's one of the sort of team leaders. He's in one of those roles. He's been around here for a while on the offensive line. If you're looking for a leader, it would be him. Like he's the one who has been at LSU probably the longest on that 2 deep. But he is I think, it's just a member of the 2 deep. He's not really, from what we've seen anyhow, competing for a starting job.
Okay, related concern that we have to the offensive line. You mentioned last year's offensive line was very good at pass blocking. Never really got the run game going. And I think those concerns still exist. You mentioned, Caden Durham, so talented. Caleb Jackson was the darling of preseason camp last year. Jawan Johnson, a talented guy who's moved to running back. Even Harlem Berry is this, very highly touted freshman who's in here. The pieces are there to have a good running game. Not something we've seen consistently so far.
Exactly. LSU has talent. It's like there's talent at tight end, receiver, running back, quarterback, and can the offensive line let it all operate? Because the running back room, even without depth, because of JT Lindsey's arrest and Trey Holly's ongoing legal stuff and transferring to Southern, like they don't have if a couple injuries and you're in trouble. Injury to Caden Durham and you're in trouble because you would not have somebody who is experienced back there. Now Caden Durham came in as a true freshman, but like we haven't seen Harlem Berry necessarily like emerge here in camp yet. And so, anyhow. They've got talent there. Yes, I think Caden Durham could have a great season. He just needs a few holes to run through. But yeah, they've got to keep him healthy. He can't have the plate in his foot like he had last year and all that, playing through that.
He is just talking about him though. Going back to a positive, he can accelerate. He can go from like 0 to 60 so well. That's one of the things I really like about his abilities. Just from just finding the hole and then accelerating through it is really good. But depth at running back is a problem. Again, somebody's going to get hurt, and they've just got to be better on running game. They were last in the SEC in rushing offense last year, 116 yards a game or something like that. You just have to be a little more balanced. If you can just, and not have to be great. It doesn't have to be 1995 Nebraska, but they've got to be better and to complement the running game and make teams go, are they going to run it here? Are they going to pass it here?
Yeah. Is this purely an O-line problem, or is there something scheme-wise LSU can do to unlock the running game a little bit?
It's probably a little bit of both. We'll have a better idea once we get into the season. I mean, last year was a little bit of both, it felt like. And there was also, LSU's got to be a better blocking team at receiver, too. Like, the perimeter blocking's got to be better at times. It wasn't always just the offensive line, but the offensive line is where it starts. And I think they recognize that. They understand it. In a slight change from the Will Campbell quote of last year about how they're going to run the football, basically guaranteeing it. But Bordelon, who you mentioned a minute ago, said, our job is to protect us and run the damn football, and that's what we're going to try to do.
Kind of sounds like Will Campbell, man.
Well, except he says that's what we're going to try to do. He wasn't saying like that. He wasn't saying that's what we're going to do. He's like, we're going to try.
And I think we need to throw in here.
And he apologized for cursing.
Very much.
So wholesome. Yeah.
Trades Green obviously has to get better at blocking. Bauer Sharp, that's one of his attributes supposedly.
When he doesn't whiff, there are times when he's not quite in the right position, but when he gets on a guy, he's good. Yes.
Whiffing bad. Yeah.
But they're gonna need help. They can. It's not just be. I guess the point I'm saying. Maybe they don't have to always just count on those 5. They can go into a 2 tight end set and get some things going in a positive. Anything will help.
We talk about like things snowballing on Nussmeier, and part of that is you feel like you got to do everything, especially when you fall behind. Like now I've got to go make every play, and the defense is sitting on every route, and like you need some running game if you're going to be an elite team. You just have to have it. So. To me, this is kind of another one like the O-line. They're preseason camp concerns, but part of it is just because we're going to have to go see it in a game, or these concerns will just never go away.
The fun and gun Steve Spurrier offenses in the 90s and early 2000s, they could run the ball when they had to. Everyone always was marveling at their passing game, and it was great, but they ran the ball when they had to, and LSU's going to have to be able to run the ball when they have to. You got to get between the tackles sometimes and make those couple of yards. And everybody decried the Les Miles era. They weren't offensively sophisticated enough in the passing game. That's true, but they could generally run the ball when they had to. And they need to regain some of that this year somehow from the running backs or the offensive line or whatever.
Just don't go back to the toss dive.
All right, so we've given you some reasons for optimism, some reasons for not so optimism halfway through between start of camp, start of the season. We will be back next week. One more thing before we go. We do owe you an injury report. Not a lot to report. Jakeem Jackson still out of practice.
As of Tuesday, he was working out with athletic trainers off to the side, riding a stationary bike. Solomon Thomas is again out. He's out for the whole preseason. But Aaron Anderson is getting back into things. We've seen him wearing the compression sleeves on both legs, but he's doing a lot more than he was after missing most of the first week and a half or so of camp. And then again, Garrett Nussmeier, no limitations, wearing a sleeve kind of brace type thing on his left knee, but doing everything out there. So that would be your injury report.
I think that's mostly good news at this point. Your injury report is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. Guys, just to wrap up, more or less optimistic about this 2025 LSU Tigers football team than you were on July 30th?
Neither. I'm the same.
You're right where you were?
Right where I was, yeah. We'll get into the season predictions probably on a later podcast, but I feel about the same. And I said this at the top of the show, reiterate it. I feel like this is a team that is capable of being in playoff contention in November. And if they fall short of that, then it is a season that was not as good enough as it should have been. I think they're capable of that, and we'll see how it plays out.
I was thinking 10-2 going into the season, and that gets you in the playoff. I'm leaning a little more towards 9-3 at this point from what I've seen because of some of the concerns that we mentioned. But like Will said, they're right on the cut. There's a bunch of games that are going to could go either way games. A lot of games, maybe half the games on the schedule. So they got to win the majority of those, and then they'll be fine. But that's a lot to ask as well. When you're going to Clemson, going to Alabama, going to Ole Miss, playing an improved Florida team at home, Texas A&M at home. So it's a challenging schedule. So I'm a little less optimistic. 9-3 could get you in the playoff one of these years, especially when they expand it to 16 teams, which they're probably going to do. But this year, you wouldn't count on it. So they got to be at least 10-2 or better.
All right, that's our show for today. We'll be back early next week with another LSU Sports Insider podcast. For our producers, Amelia LaCour and Molly Ballinger, he's Scott Rabalais and Wilson Alexander. I'm Zach Ewing. We'll see you next time.